2026 NFL Scouting Combine is officially behind us, and we got to do a post Combine mock draft. There are a lot of risers and a lot of fallers from the Combine over the past couple days. So, we're going to start off with the consensus number one overall pick, Fernando Mendoza out of the University of Indiana. Listen, how I view this guy is, whether he's a quarterback or not, this guy is the best player in this draft by far. Typically, there's like NFL drafts, like for example, last season, where maybe Cam Ward isn't the greatest prospect of all time, but it fits the need at one with the Tennessee Titans and they go with Cam Ward. In this case, however, I think that Fernando Mendoza would probably go number one overall. Regardless, some team would trade up for the number one overall pick to get Mendoza just because of how good he really is. 16-0 at Indiana, national championship, Heisman winner. The guy can really do it all. And the biggest thing that I noted from the combine is that he was 235, around 235 for his official weigh-in. And that's really good because a lot of people considered him like a skinny, lanky quarterback. And clearly because of that weight number, that's not the case at all. He's definitely bulked up and gained some strength, which is really important at the NFL level for sure when the guys are, 2 times as big and 3 times as scary. So Fernando Mendoza, number one overall to the Las Vegas Raiders. I love to see it, and I think everyone else is pretty much expecting that to be the case. At number two overall, you can go a lot of different ways. I'm going to go with Arvell Reese out of Ohio State University. He's just too good. He can play both Mike linebacker as well as edge rusher. At edge rusher, he's not perfect. He's still got to, learn some of the routines, some of the moves. But a guy who's 6'4", 240, ran a 4.46 at the 40. Really impressive stuff there from Reese, a commander of that Ohio State defense who really played out of their mind in 2025. And I think he'll just take that leadership and move that towards, the pro level as well with New York. And he fits in need as well, linebacker, defensive end, especially with the New York Jets trading away Jermaine Johnson for T'Vondre Sweat. They lose a defensive end and gain a defensive tackle, which actually helps out really well for them to kind of clear a lane to get Reese with their second overall pick. So Arvell Reese, barring nothing crazy happens with him at his pro day or off the field, Reese will probably go number two or within the top 5 for sure. At number 3, I'm going to go with probably the safest pick that we've gotten so far, and that's going to be Francis Mauigoa. And he is just an incredible, player. 6'6", 315. The guy is just a baller because he can move so quickly, and he's just kind of limitless when it comes to his position as well. At Miami, he played right tackle, but you can slide him in the guard. You probably can move him over to left tackle if you really need to. But having Mauigoa is not going to be the end-all, be-all to all your problems in Arizona, but it definitely will help out to protect whoever the quarterback is because it's not going to be Kyler Murray after June 1st. So Francis Mauigoa, definitely to the Arizona Cardinals, will be a huge addition alongside a guy like Paris Johnson, alongside other guys on that line. And you really could... I always say that football always starts in the trenches with your offensive defensive line. Once you solidify that, you can definitely go with more of your skill position guys, go with your quarterback because if there's no such thing as a quarterback position without the offensive line protecting them. So Francis Mauigoa out of Miami going to the Arizona Cardinals. Number 4, the Tennessee Titans can go a lot of different ways with this one. I'm going to have them go with David Bailey out of Texas Tech. Similarly to Arvell Reese, had a really solid combine, ran a 4.5 as an edge rusher, is really impressive. Not the greatest when it comes to run defense, but I think going to Tennessee could really be a good, team to go to, especially when it comes to lacking those skills because obviously Jeff Simmons is still there. Now you have Jermaine Johnson. Both of those guys are definitely better when it comes to run defense, and that, comes with experience in the NFL, obviously, but just his frame, his size, his athleticism really fits the mold of what Tennessee's looking for on the defensive line. And I feel like, you can address a lot of different needs in Tennessee, like receiver, like corner, like even running back. Like Jeremiah Love is definitely on the board as well, on the table. But I think addressing the edge rushing room with a guy like David Bailey, who's such an incredible prospect, could definitely be a solid addition to your defensive line, barring if you can fix the run defense. Number 5, you can go, again, a lot of different ways with this. I think it's between the two Ohio State guys, Caleb Downs and Carnell Tate. I'm going to have them go with Carnell Tate here. And I'll say this, his combine metrics are not the greatest. They're not the fastest, he wasn't the strongest, but it's not always about, being the fastest or the strongest when it comes to being a receiver. He ran like a 4.50 40-yard dash. Um, and I think a lot of people will downplay that and say that that tank his draft stock. I disagree purely on the basis that, you know, a 40-yard dash doesn't always show you how people will play on the field. And I think that Carnell Tate is a lot faster when you see him on the field. And it's not always about the speed as well. In his senior year at Ohio State, he did not have a single drop when targeted. And for a guy like Carnell Tate, who is a prototypical go up and get it kind of receiver, it really is kind of incredible how he was able to really kind of shine in that Ohio State offense alongside Jeremiah Smith, who is an absolutely generational prospect. We don't even need to get into talks about him. But Carnell Tate kind of fits the role of what a New York Giants receiver is, someone who's fearless, someone who can go up and get the football, and someone who actually will pair up really nicely with Malik Nabers. Just barring no other injury concerns, and with Wan'Dale Robinson being a free agent, his career in New York might be done. But Malik Nabers and Carnell Tate would be a really nasty duo in New York, and it will definitely help out Jackson Dart as he moves into his sophomore season. So Carnell Tate to the New York Giants, I love it. Number 6 overall, what do? Do you get a guy like Ruben Bain to pair with Myles Garrett? That would be nasty. Do you get Caleb Downs? I'm going to go out and get Jordan Tyson from Arizona State. And this might be a little bit early for Jordan Tyson compared to what most others are mocking him to. I think that you want to get Shedeur Sanders the most help you can. Yes, obviously, tackle and guard is definitely a position of need. But I would argue you can probably get a better quality guard than you can get a better quality receiver in the second or third round. And Jordan Tyson is really an incredible prospect when he's on the field. The biggest concern with him always is his injury, a torn ACL, a nagging hamstring injury. The list goes on with different injuries and different problems with Jordan Tyson. But if you can clear those injuries up and just keep him healthy, I think he's an incredible receiver. And he's like your third down. Like, if you're going to target a guy who for a fact is going to catch the football in clutch situations, that is Jordan Tyson for sure. Can you even trust a guy like Jerry Jeudy to be that guy anymore? It's tough to say at this point. I mentioned in my free agency video that I had Wan'Dale Robinson go into the Cleveland Browns. Similarly, for similar reasons, Jordan Tyson, you pair him up with his brother who plays on the Cleveland Cavaliers, would be a pretty cool storyline there. We move on to number 7, where I'm going to have Washington going with Sonny Styles out of Ohio State. And I was kind of going back and forth between Caleb Downs and Sonny Styles here. I ended up going with Styles just purely on the basis that Caleb Downs did have something with his ACL come out of the NFL Combine that did not look great, which could kind of tank his draft stock as well. Similarly to like a Will Johnson from last season, who had some other medical issues that kind of dropped into the second round. I don't think Downs will be out of the first round. I definitely think he will maybe fall out of the top 10 because of that. But with that being said, Sonny Styles fits kind of a mold of two players in one here. Obviously, at the pro level, he's going to be a pure Mike linebacker, pure will linebacker, but he has experience playing defensive back. So you can tell that obviously his coverage skills are going to be really nice, but also his frame as well, 6'5", 250, running a 4.4 as well in the 4.4s. Definitely an incredible prospect, 43.5-inch vert, 11-foot broad jump. There's a lot to like from a guy like Sonny Styles. Pairing him up with, Bobby Wagner with his last season, most likely, could be a nice addition. A guy who can be a veteran and train him up to be maybe the next Bobby Wagner himself. So Sonny Styles, I think, just fits a mold of a Washington Commander. Someone who's hard-hitting, someone who, plays smart, someone who's a leader as well. So Styles to Washington makes a lot of sense, kind of fits multiple needs as a multi-dimensional player. And we move on to number 8 with the New Orleans Saints, where they're going to be taking Ruben Bain pretty easily if he falls down to this point. I have Ruben Bain as my second best edge rusher alongside alongside David Bailey. I don't consider Arvell Reese purely an edge rusher, but we can get into that discussion a little bit later. But Ruben Bain obviously is one of the better prospects in this draft. The only reason he kind of falls is just due to his combine metrics. I think he was 6'2, 6'3, but 30-inch arms is not ideal for a guy of his caliber. When you're playing edge rusher, having long arms definitely helps trying to get leverage, trying to get some swing moves, trying to get some spin moves. When you have shorter arms, it makes it a lot easier for the tackles to try to, box you out and try to get them off of you. Um, Obviously, when he played at Miami, that didn't seem to be a big factor, but you often have to question whether that will change at the NFL level. And so Bain will continue to stay in the top 10, but I would just say that because of the metrics, I don't think teams will value him exactly the same as how they valued him on tape. But again, this probably adds more fuel to the fire to say, let's prove all these teams wrong and let's go out and ball out. But Ruben Bain falls to the Saints here, a position of need, maybe Cam Jordan's last year as well. So similarly, could be also a mentoring experience as well. So number 9 to the Kansas City Chiefs. Again, falls right into their lap. Jeremiah Love. And if the Chiefs manage to get Jeremiah Love in this draft, it might be game over for all NFL defenses. Jeremiah Love is a unique prospect, mainly because, for one, he's an incredible runner, but also his pass catching ability is just through the roof as well. Love participated in pretty much every combine drill you could think of, the gauntlet, the obviously the running back drills, the 40-yard dash, and he ran a 4.3 40-yard dash, I believe, and for him to carry all that weight, he's about 215 and 6 foot, and run a 4.3 is actually very impressive for a guy who's, I guess, maybe not traditionally known for his top-notch speed. So pairing him up with Patrick Mahomes in the Kansas City Chiefs offense could really be like a very unique and nice addition for Kansas City. The possibilities of using him in your offense is pretty limitless. As we know, Andy Reid loves to, you know, make some cool trick plays with the offense over the past years. So having Jeremiah Love in there can really almost make him like a positionless player as a receiver, as a running back, and any other way you want him to use him, he probably could find a role there for sure. So Jeremiah Love to the Kansas City Chiefs could be really dangerous for years to come. Number 10, and I think this is where Caleb Downs is going to go. The need at safety for the Cincinnati Bengals is pretty obvious. And you guys get the best safety in the draft, someone who's got really good length, really good speed, someone who is a difference maker and a culture shifter, and someone who's just going to be ready to work immediately. As I mentioned before, Caleb Downs did have a bit of a problem with an ACL injury when doing the combine testing. I mean, that could potentially hurt his draft stock a little bit more, but for me at least, it drops him from maybe a top 5 pick to a top 10 pick. So Caleb Downs really goes out and finds a new role with Cincinnati, um, keeps him in state as well, the Ohio State Cincinnati connection, and he could really be a incredible piece to the Cincinnati defense as they're kind of rebuilding themselves. Trey Hendrickson, obviously a free agent now, and I think as they just continue to develop these young players, you need a guy who can kind of step out of their shadow and kind of solidify themselves as a top player at their position. And I think Caleb Downs definitely has the potential to do that. Obviously, probably still learning from his brother as well, Josh, who's a receiver for the Indianapolis Colts. So having that insider connection where he knows what it's like at the NFL level could also be a nice just thing that player would have for sure. So Caleb Downs falls to the Cincinnati Bengals at number 10, but we move on to number 11, where the Miami Dolphins are going to be taking Mansour Delane out of LSU. And if we watched pretty much any game from the Miami Dolphins in 2025, they did not look great on defense. And it's pretty obvious where the need is for sure, and that's at cornerback. I mean, cornerback and safety just got decimated pretty much all year. Safety is not much of a concern. You don't know the future with Minkah Fitzpatrick, but cornerback is definitely just a desperate need for Miami right now. Mansour Lane is just an incredible player because, um, I mean, personally, he's just been the best cornerback in college football because of his ability to play man and zone coverage. With a lot of these guys, his length is really good as well. Didn't do much combine testing from what I can remember, but Delane to the Miami Dolphin fits in need. He's probably one of the better players available at this point, and I definitely like seeing an LSU guy go to Miami for sure. Moving on to number 12, you can go a lot of different ways again with this. I'm going to have him go with CJ Allen out of Georgia. CJ Allen is unique because there's been articles and rumors about him pretty much being the sole commander and the sole leader of the Georgia Bulldogs defense. Um, and that can mean a lot of different things. Like, obviously, Georgia didn't have the greatest season of all time, but when you have a guy like CJ Allen who, based on that article, is a leader, is a incredibly smart football player, and someone who tested well at the combine, it kind of is a recipe for success. Logan Wilson gets released and doesn't really do much in Dallas. Obviously, Leighton Vander Esch is a few years removed from retiring, so you really haven't had your starting linebacker kind of fill into that role yet. I think you go through the draft and find C.J. Allen in there, who could be a good coverage guy, a good man guy, someone who's a good tackler as well. So I think as he continues to grow and develop, he's gonna turn into a star for Dallas. You get that? Um, and I think it could be actually um, a really nice addition for the Dallas defense as they continue to kind of grow without Micah Parsons for the long time. Long term. Moving on to the LA Rams, they actually just lost their second pick in the first round because of the trade with Trent McDuffie. We'll get to that a little bit later. For this first pick, I'm going to do it because I don't even care anymore. Makai Lemon to the LA Rams. And a lot of people will look at that and say, why Makai Lemon? And I think to answer that is, well, a few reasons. Number one, Devontae Adams is getting older. You don't know how many more years he's really going to have under his belt. Number two, Makai Lemon is a completely different receiver from both Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua. And just number three, he's an absolute baller as well. He'll most likely be used at the NFL level as a slot, but again, he's what, 5'11, 192, 5'11, 180. Let's look. Yeah, 5'11 to 195, but he plays like he's 6'2, 205. He is a fearless receiver, a guy who can really make a difference when he's on the field, and really just an incredible player, incredible person as well, from what I've been hearing. The interviews at the combine were, questionable at best. The podium stare got me a little bit uncomfortable, so I didn't really appreciate that. But I think that Makai Lemon is just a good enough prospect that if it's true with the interview problems, then maybe he falls a little bit later in the first round. But until that's actually confirmed, I'm still going to keep him within the top 15 for sure. So Makai Lemon to the LA Rams, that just makes that defense a whole lot scarier. And you got to have all the help you can get, especially with Matthew Stafford most likely playing his last season in the NFL. Moving on to number 14, I'm going to have them go out and get Keldrick Falk out of Auburn. And Falk is a pretty solid prospect, 6'6", about 280. Didn't do a whole lot with the combine measurements, but I think it doesn't really matter with a guy like Falk. Yeah, and Keldrick Falk is 6'6", about 280 pounds. And, I mean, he's only going to be 21 years old by the time the next NFL season rolls around. So the longevity you can have with Falk is pretty much unmatched when it comes to this draft. He's definitely got a lot of good tools under his belt. He's got good leverage, obviously, with his size. He has a good job with, like, protecting the scramble quarterbacks, trying to get them out of the pocket. And again, he's a big pressure guy as well. Not the greatest production in general, but I think Keldrick Falk doesn't always need that production to be considered a good edge rusher as well. Good off the run as well. But overall, I mean, Keldrick Falk definitely fits a need for the Baltimore Ravens. You don't know the status with Madubuike going forward. So solidifying your defensive line, especially on the edge, is definitely going to be a need that they fill either in the first round or in later rounds as well. So Keldrick Falk, being the best edge rusher available, is going to be probably your best move going forward. Moving on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. My good friend Max this morning said that he doesn't want this player to get drafted, and so I do not care in the slightest. We're going to go get him, Kenyon Sadiq from Oregon University. And Kenyon is, I think, just the do-it-all tight end for you that can really make a huge impact. Cade Otton's status with Tampa Bay is pretty much unknown up to this point. So I think that having a guy like Kenyon Sadiq, who posted incredible numbers at the combine, a 4.540, I think, or no, 4.440, excuse me, running a 4.440, having a really solid vert, having a really solid broad jump, is just something that you love to see from a tight end. The explosiveness is there, the leadership is there, and the position of need is there. Tight end is definitely a position of need for Tampa Bay. The only opposition is like, you got your skill player in the last year's draft. Would you really want to get another one in this year's draft? And to answer that, I just think that because of the prospect that Kenyon Sadiq is, the type of player that he is, I think it's almost impossible to pass up on him, especially when he is, 15 picks in. I think there's obviously a need at tight end with Tampa Bay, and you could go linebacker, but C.J. Allen's off the board, and obviously Sonny Styles will be off the board by this point. I just think that you just probably go best player available, and Kenyon Sadiq is definitely going to be that for sure. Moving on to the New York Jets, as they're up on the clock again. As we know, they took Arvell Reese with their first overall pick. I'm going to have them go with Jermod McCoy out of the University of Tennessee. And there is injury concerns. Hasn't played football in a full calendar year. But I think when healthy, when he's on the field, he is the best defensive back in college football. Obviously, like I mentioned, did not play in 2025, but when he was on the field with the Volunteers, he was pretty much locked down. And I just think that some teams will be scared away by the injury concerns, but I personally don't think that it's the biggest issue out there, especially if you're coming back healthy for the 2026 season. But I mean, obviously, fits in need. You lose Sauce Gardner at the midseason trade deadline to Indianapolis. You didn't really have a guy come in and, taking that new cornerback one role. As we know, New York didn't have a single interception in 2025, which is actually maybe more impressive than having a bunch of interceptions, to be honest. But Jermod McCoy comes in, probably easily becomes the cornerback one, and you're hoping to kind of revamp that New York Jets defense with Arvell Reese and Jermod McCoy going forward. Another big pick that I like to see from the Detroit Lions is going to be Vega Ioane. I don't know if I'm saying that fully correctly, but the Penn State guard, definitely the best guard in this draft. Graham Glasgow is released. That offensive line outside of Penei Sewell is pretty much replaceable. Maybe Tate Ratledge could stick around for a little bit, but Ioane is almost pretty much the Penei Sewell of guards. He's incredibly athletic. He's incredibly reliable. And someone who almost kind of fits the role of a Dan Campbell offensive line, who's gritty, who's fearless, who can really put a hands on the defensive players and really make a difference when it comes to open up the holes for bell cow back Jahmyr Gibbs, as David Montgomery is now pretty much gone. So Ioane, definitely to the Detroit Lions, makes a lot of sense, fits a needed guard. And so you move on to number 18 with the Minnesota Vikings, where they go and get Dylan Thieneman out of Oregon and get Kenyon Sadiq and Dylan Thieneman both in the first round of this draft. And this is definitely one of my biggest risers in this draft after the combine. Had an unreal performance at the combine. Ran a 4.35 40-yard dash with a 1.52 10-yard split, 41-inch vertical jump, 10 feet 5-inch broad jump, and then had 18 reps on the bench. Thieneman is kind of a interesting safety because, I mean, you can probably move him down to just like standard corner, but also, he has the speed for that as well. But this has been the fastest safety class we've seen in a while. Safeties typically don't run as fast as corners, but in this case they did. And Thieneman obviously fits the need with the Minnesota Vikings. Harrison Smith isn't getting any younger, and I think that just they need help anyway. So if you keep Harrison Smith around for another year, and make that a nice combo there in Minnesota, maybe for his last season, could be the move. Could definitely be a nice piece to add for the Minnesota Vikings as they, again, change up their defense pretty much every year, it seems. Obviously, Javon Hargraves is going to be gone now. They said they were open to trading Jonathan Grenard. So this defense is going to be looking a lot different in 2026. So Dylan Thieneman to the Minnesota Vikings. Moving on to the Carolina Panthers, they are going to go out and get Akeem Mesidor out of Miami. The other edge rusher in Miami, and also some say the better edge rusher in Miami. I don't think that's the case due to his age, but sometimes age isn't always the number one factor when it comes to players not getting drafted. There was a player from Arizona a couple years ago who I think was still 25 that got drafted as well. So sometimes teams don't even value age when it comes to that stuff. But I mean, by the end of his rookie contract, he'll be 30. So that's definitely a concern. But the player himself is just an incredible prospect. Akeem Mesidor is really good when it comes to both running defense and pass rushing, just general pass rushing as well. So it fits a need. You obviously have two young players in Prince Emmanuel and Nick Scorton in there. Didn't have the greatest production from both of those fellas in Carolina, so you get a guy in there to be another rotational piece, someone who probably can play the three down technique, and I think Mesidor definitely can find a role for himself in Carolina without a shadow of a doubt. Dallas up with their second overall pick. As we mentioned, they also took CJ Allen. You could go again a lot of different ways, but I'm going to have them go with Avion Terrell out of the University of Clemson. And Trayvon Diggs, as we know, is not part of the organization anymore. He goes to the Green Bay Packers. And I think just finding a guy who can be a reliable cornerback one, whether that be in free agency or in the draft, is definitely going to be a position of need going forward. So Avion Terrell, as we know, the Clemson's team just did not have the greatest season in general, but you can either attribute that to the players themselves or just the team not really syncing up and being full, complete, unison of a team there. But Avion Terrell, as we know, has really shown up to be a incredible prospect, the brother of AJ Terrell Jr. And I just overall think that what he can do on the field, what his play speed looks like, definitely could be a nice addition. 5'11", 180, but I mean 83.5 PFF grade in different boxes. So D line, mostly at corner. So he'll be your prototypical corner one. Not really in the slot a whole lot. 110 snaps at slot, so he can play slot if you need him to. But overall, you get a guy who's pretty multi-dimensional from your defensive back room, and definitely could fill in the role of cornerback one going forward. 21. And you can go a lot of different ways again with this type of with Pittsburgh at 21, but I'm gonna have them go with another receiver, Denzel Boston, and the question mark always is with Pittsburgh is what are you gonna do with DK Metcalf? Not the season you want from Metcalf, especially when you get him from Seattle and kind of trade off a couple different, pieces there. But I think pairing Denzel Boston up with DK Metcalf is not going to be the worst option out there, especially when both of those receivers are kind of similar in terms of what they're good at. Metcalf, obviously, I would say just the better prospect coming out of the combine. Boston didn't have the greatest combine ever, but again, you look at what he does on the field and it looks a little bit different than what you see at the combine. So you don't know what to expect with Boston, so you are kind of taking a gamble. But having him learn under DK Metcalf, a guy who's been in the league for, close to 7 years at this point, so he's definitely learned a lot and has found his role in the NFL. And I think you definitely do need some help there at receiver. Aaron Rodgers probably playing his last season, but we say that every year, so we don't know for certain. So DK Metcalf gets his wide receiver 2 with Denzel Boston in the first round, and I'm just hoping that it'll work out for sure for them. And moving on to the LA Chargers, I'm going to have them go out and get Spencer Fano from Utah. The good thing about Spencer Fano for sure is, yes, he's listed at a tackle. He's 6'6", 308, but Fano can definitely slide easily into a guard spot. And as we know, that interior line for The LA Chargers was just horrendous in 2025. That playoff game, as I mentioned, was not the greatest for that line and for Justin Herbert and for the Chargers offense in general. But overall, you need to improve the interior offensive line. Barring if Ione does not, go to the Lions or any team before the Chargers, he could be an option. But Fano is probably the best when it comes to, finding your, future, left guard or right guard. And I mean, he played well at Utah as well. Definitely has the right size and the right speed for the position. And I think that overall, Fano is going to be the best player available, fitting a need that you definitely need going forward if you want to keep Justin Herbert healthy. 23 with the Philadelphia Eagles is interesting because you can go a lot of different ways with this. Obviously, edge could use some help, corner could use some help. But with that being said, I think I'm going to go with Monroe Freeling out of Georgia. And it's a tough one because he is purely a left tackle. He has the frame of a left tackle. He's about 6'7", 315. So Freeling is going to be a tackle in this league, no doubt. He's just too big to transition into guard and hasn't played enough at that position. So I think you move Mailata to right tackle, especially if Lane Johnson maybe doesn't have the season that you would hope from a guy like him. Lane Johnson, obviously, when he's not on the field, that Eagles offense looks a little bit different. Doesn't look as good, I might say. So maybe getting your guy like Freeling who can, maybe play tackle to some degree in 2026, but learn tremendously under, Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson, I think could definitely be a power move for the Philadelphia Eagles. They definitely have a tendency of drafting guys without playing them, firstly. So getting a guy like Freeling, who is probably the most tackle type, tackle in this league. Like, it's tough to explain, but like Maui Noah could move into guard. Fano most likely will move into guard. There's a couple other guys, like Ione is already a guard as well. So Freeling is purely a tackle, and tackle could be something that they need going forward. So Monroe Freeling to the Philadelphia Eagles. The Cleveland Browns have their second pick. As we know, Jordan Tyson was first off the board to them. So you can go again a lot of different ways here. I'm going to have them go with, let's give them Caden Proctor. Purely on the basis of Caden Proctor can move into guard as like most of these like most of these offensive linemen in this draft. Proctor, who definitely will be like a piece of work in 2025, someone that you might have to train up to, be multi-dimensional on that offensive line. Like I mentioned with a couple of other teams, it all starts with the trenches. And I think getting a guy like Caden Proctor, who's got the size to play guard and tackle, could be a nice addition, as he did test pretty well at the combine as well. So Caden Proctor, going to Cleveland, that's definitely rebuilding their offense alongside Shedeur Sanders with Jerry Jeudy. I guess with Jordan Tyson now, with Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson. There's a lot of different holes that this offense needs to fill, but I think starting with the trenches could be the first move in this draft. Moving on to the Chicago Bears, they are going to go out and get Cassius Howell from Texas A&M. Howell, who had a really solid 2025 with the Aggies, had 11.5 sacks, has a lot to clean up. His run defense is not the greatest, but he knows how to get to the quarterback. And pairing up a guy with Montez Sweat has definitely been something that they've been looking for a while now. Gervon Dexter, who's more of an interior defensive lineman, has requested to seek a trade. So that defensive line is going to get revamped for sure. They could definitely go interior defensive lineman with Caleb Banks, but I just think that the defensive tackle class in this year is just not the greatest, not the most consistent. So that's why I have some of these guys falling here, but they'll go off the board pretty soon. So Cassius Howell to the Chicago Bears. You elevate that defensive line, getting a guy who can be a good sack producer in the league. I like to see it happen. And this falls right into the hands of the Buffalo Bills. Casey Concepcion, you go back-to-back Aggies players. Concepcion is fast. We know that from his combine. We know that from his shuttle drill. We know that from his gauntlet drill. So I think a lot of these receivers have a good archetype to them. They have guys who can go and catch the ball, the guys who can be a good slot receiver, a good route runner, a good deep threat. KC Concepcion is like a good mix of most of those. Someone who has good hands, someone who's fast, someone who can be a multi-dimensional receiver for the Bills. And I think he fits a different mold to what most of the receivers on the Bills are at this point. And I think that having Concepcion on this team with Josh Allen will elevate him to a whole nother level. So I definitely like to see that happen as a Bills fan. But hey, there's a lot of guys available that we could definitely take. Like Caleb Banks is available, Emmanuel McNeil Warren is available. So you go a lot of different ways with this pick, but KC Concepcion is definitely a gamble that I'm willing to take. The San Francisco 49ers are up next, and I am going to have them go with TJ Parker. And like I mentioned with Avion Terrell, TJ Parker and the Clemson Tigers just did not have the greatest 2025. The whole team just played down. But TJ Parker obviously fits the need. You still have Nick Bosa there. You still have Michael Williams. But TJ Parker is just another solid piece where he's a little bit bigger, I think, if I can look at what his metrics are. Yeah, 6'3", 260. So he's got solid size and solid speed as well. And I think if you take TJ Parker at the end of 2024, it's a different story. I think he could be a top 10 pick. But again, not all these players can stay consistent from previous years. But TJ Parker definitely still has a lot of solid potential to be a interesting prospect and someone who, if you find the fullest potential of Parker, he could be a really incredible player in this league. You just got to kind of find the spark that he might have had in 2024. 5 picks left. The Texans are on the clock. As we know, they recently just got David Montgomery from the Detroit Lions. So every team can really go a lot of different ways with their pick, outside of probably the first overall pick with Mendoza. So I think I'm going to have them go with Caleb Banks here. He kind of falls right into their laps, but he's the first defensive tackle I have off the board, and he goes to Houston. Fits a need. You have Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter off the edge and Caleb Banks up the middle. That could be a scary, scary defensive line that already was incredible in 2025. When you have a guy like Banks who had an incredible 2024 and a pretty down year in 2025, I think it actually could be a nice addition for the Houston Texans to get interior presence. Maybe help stop that run defense that wasn't actually the greatest in 2025. Banks, who has his incredible frame. Let's look at his metrics here. If he wants to pull up. Yeah, 6'6", 330, and he ran a 5.04 in the combine. That's actually really impressive for a guy of that size. I think he's just really athletic for the frame that he's able to carry around. So Banks to clog up the middle there for Houston could make a lot of sense going forward. Kansas City has the 29th overall pick now due to the LA Rams trading for Trent McDuffie, who will most likely be their starting slot corner going forward. They took a lot of Kansas City took a lot of the draft stock that LA had. However, LA Rams didn't really need it, though, to be honest. They already have a really solid team as well. But Kansas City is definitely looking to bolster their defensive line. And I think having Caden McDonald learn under Chris Jones, learn under George Karlaftis could be a nice addition. As you can see later down, these are where some of these guys are going to go. These defensive linemen are going to go. Caden McDonald, it was between Lee Hunter and Caden McDonald here. You can obviously go with Texas Tech. Lee Hunter, there's obviously the connection there with Patrick Mahomes, who went to Texas Tech, but Caden McDonald, who was another big key part of the Ohio State defense, really is a good run-stuffing defensive tackle, and someone who has a really solid frame as well. 6'3", 326. He's not the tallest guy out there, but he's definitely got the weight and the size to move around the offensive line and try to cause some problems with the running backs. So I think having a guy like Caden McDonald on your D-line makes a lot of sense going forward. 3 picks to go. Denver Broncos are up now. What do you do? I'm going to have them get Eli Stowers out of Vanderbilt. And Stowers is good at one thing. He's good in catching the football, and he's good at getting some good possession catch. He is not a blocker by any means. He's almost your Colston Loveland from last year's draft. But just in terms of his athleticism, 45.5-inch vert, I think 11-foot broad, and a really good combine. I think it was like close to a 4.5 run for Stowers as well. There's a need at tight end. Evan Ingram is, I mean, you don't know what the role is for Evan Ingram in 2026 as he kind of dealt with some injuries. But overall, Eli Stowers adds a really nice element to this offense. He won't be your top blocking tight end, which some of the elite tight ends really aren't blockers. Well, I can't say that. Brock Bowers, George Kittle, Travis Kelce are all blockers, but Eli Stowers definitely needs to clean up some things when it comes to his blocking ability. But I think just in general, he definitely has the framework to be a really solid piece. And if you're still looking for some pass catchers through the tight end position, Stowers is definitely going to be your number one option, especially if Sadiq is off the board. 31, the losers of the Super Bowl, New England Patriots, are up now on the clock. They're going to probably go with Zion Young out of Missouri. Had a really good senior day, had a really good combine, and I think he's, again, one of the bigger jumpers for me as a result of both of those days. I think Young actually has a lot of good qualities as like an edge rusher. Still has a lot of things to clean up. The running defense is not the greatest. Still can kind of overdo some of the blocks as well, some of the moves. But Zion Young has the play speed and the play strength to be a really solid edge rusher, a position of need, someone who could probably play alongside K'Lavon Chaisson. So Zion Young to the New England Patriots makes a lot of sense. And last but not least, the Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks are up on the board now. What do? I think there's a need at running back for sure. Kenneth Walker is probably going to be a free agent. I'm going to have them go out and get Caleb Lomu out of Utah. Caleb Lomu definitely has the chance to be a guard or tackle at the NFL level. Maybe someone to replace Anthony Bradford, who did not have a great 2025 season. But both of the Utah tackles going off the board in the first round would be a nice addition for Seattle as they kind of rebuild their offensive line. The post-combine mock draft is officially over. Let me know down in the comments if you agree, disagree, or have any sleeper picks that kind of fell out of the first round. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment as always. My name is Adam Talks NFL. Thank you for watching.